Hello, everyone. Welcome to episode 3 of the Listening Room Sonic Journeys. I'm your host, your groove guru, your guide to the vibes, the cultural DJ. And I want to preface this episode first by saying that it is indeed a day late. And the reason being is because I recently had my wisdom teeth extracted. Technically, wisdom teeth and a molar extracted. That's 5 teeth total, folks. And the past few days has been hurt mode for me. The day that I would have been recording this episode, my mouth was giving me some problems, so I figured I'd wait another day or so to see how I felt. And at the time of recording this, my face is feeling better, so we're going to run through this. So this episode is the first in a new series that I'm doing with this podcast called On the Scene, which focuses predominantly on music scenes, whether regional or global. And today's scene is going to be focused on Philadelphia soul, also known as Philly soul or the Philadelphia sound. So Philadelphia soul is a subgenre of smooth soul from the late 60s, early 70s. The scene itself was centralized in the titular Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Now, the sound is built around pristine, glossy production like lush strings and horn arrangements, and many of the lyrics focused on romance, seductiveness, and from time to time would include light social commentary. The best way I feel that it was put as far as how Philadelphia soul sounds was from the funk legend Fred Wesley, who was the trombonist for the JBs and Parliament Funkadelic. And he said that Philadelphia soul is putting the bow tie on funk. And I feel that pretty much describes it to a T. Philadelphia soul is essentially combining classic elements of soul music and making it just really, really clean sounding. And we're going to get more into that as far as the sound, the sonic side of it, because the interesting thing, and actually really the crucial aspect of Philadelphia soul, is that it was a producer-led style, which was different from how a lot of music, especially soul music, was conducted at that point in time. Philadelphia soul the sound was built around the production style as opposed to artists. Like Motown, for example, even though they had a lot of similarities as far as like a team of producers and songwriters and all that and musicians and everything, Motown's sound and their image was based around their artists. Marvin Gaye, Martha Reeves and the Vandellas, the Supremes, the Miracles, Stevie Wonder, all of them, Temptations. The image of the company, of the record label, was built around these black pop stars. But Philadelphia soul was built around the producers. It was an ecosystem of producers and songwriters, and these ecosystems centered around two men in particular. That's Kenny Gamble and Leon Huff, all better known as Gamble and Huff. They were a duo. Some other notable folks in this circle include Bunny Sigler, Dexter Wansell, Bobby Martin, Linda Creed, McFadden and Whitehead, and MFSB, which is an acronym for Mother, Father, Sister, Brother. And MFSB was the house band for the Sigma Sound recording studio, which a lot of the collective was focused in this particular studio. There was about 30 or more session musicians, in the same way that Motown had the Funk Brothers and Stax had Booker T and the MGs, and there was the Wrecking Crew for a lot of Phil Spector recordings. So in Sigma Sound recording studio, you had the likes of Harold Melvin and the Blue Notes, the Spinners, Teddy Pendergrass, Patti LaBelle, and even folks like David Bowie and the Roots. And David Bowie was actually heavily influenced by Philadelphia soul around the time of his making the album Young Americans. And of course, the Roots, being from Philadelphia, were majorly influenced, especially the whole idea of the collective, which would play into the Soulquarians in the 90s, but that's a whole nother episode, so we'll leave that alone. Now, also, it's very important to note, and we'll get more into this as we go through the episode, is that disco takes many, many cues from Philly soul. It's foundational in its birth and development, especially when it comes to elements like the active, energetic four-on-the-floor rhythms, the intricate string and horn arrangements, the extended grooves, and it added jazz inflected melodies. So there is a great deal of overlap, and we'll see this in just a second with the songs art to list. But that's a bit of background on Philly Soul. It was a major collaborative effort. A lot of artists and producers and musicians and songwriters were all working together in the studio in and around Philadelphia, building this scene around this sound. So a lot of them were actually, interesting enough, a lot of the producers were also the musicians performing on the songs. So that goes to show that they really had their fingers on the knobs and were in the studio making the songs themselves. So now we're going to list 4 songs that I feel personally really embody the essence of Philadelphia soul. And the first one is going to be TSOP, or The Sound of Philadelphia, which was released in 1974. This is by MFSB and also includes the 3 Degrees. Now, this to me is the premier Philadelphia soul song. Like this is the song that if you really want to know what Philadelphia soul sounds like, this is definitely the song you'd want to listen to. It has all the conventional elements that we previously mentioned. And fun fact about this song actually is that it was the theme song for Soul Train, which was not filmed in Philadelphia. It started in Chicago and moved to LA, but it was the theme song for Soul Train from 1973 to 1975, and then it was remixed in 87 and 89, and then also 2000. But the Sound of Philadelphia is without a doubt the song you'd want to go to kind of get an idea of what this genre actually sounds like, right? So the second song now is If You Don't Know Me By Now by Harold Melvin and the Blue Notes with Teddy Pendergrass. This was released in 1972, and it is a slower, more moody ballad, and it really allows you to get a better feel of not only the soul essence from Teddy Pendergrass's vocals, but also for the production aspect. You really, because they forego the high tempo rhythm for a more slow and seductive song. And this really kind of allows you to get a better idea of the production aspect within Philadelphia soul. The lush, moving, swelling strings and the horns and everything, the harmonies, just how tight it is. And that's the thing, is like it's lush, but it's sonically tight. And that really goes to show that more than the soul aspect of it, it was still a machine. It was still a well-oiled machine, and that was the whole point of Philadelphia soul, is to create these songs that acted as well-oiled machines individually. The next track we have, number 3, is Love Train by the OJs from 1972. This is the song that I'm sure everybody's heard at least once. It was very, very popular and used in a lot of commercials and films and TV. You might have heard it in the Coors Light Super Bowl commercials from years ago. But this has often been regarded as one of the first, if not the first, disco songs ever made. It's essentially proto-disco in that manner. But this song also, was mentioned earlier that some songs have more socially conscious themes, and this is one of them. It's a bit more it's uplifting. It's about, global unity and everything, but it's different from the others in that those are more about romance, and a lot of them were about romance. Probably the vast majority were about romance, because that was kind of the moves at the time, of course. But this song focuses more on a global unity centered around love and coming together despite differences. That's a pretty common theme around that time. And this one is especially important because it shows like the true peak Gamble and Huff accessibility. Like, it's just pure pop perfection. This is Gamble and Huff at the height of their powers, essentially. So Love Train by the OJs, I feel, is a great track to listen to also get a feel for not only what Philadelphia soul sounds like, but also kind of the overlap with disco. And that especially takes us into the last track, number 4, which is 10% by Double Exposure from 1976. Now, this track bridges us directly into disco. 1976, we're like right as disco was really getting going. So this is the track that really shows that overlap more sternly between Philadelphia soul and disco. And also, this track is historically relevant and important because this was the very first commercially issued 12-inch single. Now, this is important because 12-inch singles would go on to become a fairly common practice in disco music, but before this track, that wasn't really a thing, like being commercially released to people to buy. 12-inch singles were reserved for DJs exclusively until this song. You would have the 12-inch singles for the extended jam aspect, so the dances could go on for longer, but it was something that only the DJs had. It wasn't something that a fan or a listener or a consumer would own, but this was the very first one. Record companies, they saw little commercial value in a 12-inch single. They didn't really see the point in it. Singles are meant to be short, right? Because people want that one song or the B-side. They want, the 3-minute, 3.5-minute, 4-minute even song, and that's it. But you had these 12-inch singles that would run on for, 4.5 minutes, 5 minutes, 6 minutes. They'd be double-sided. You'd have one side with like half the song and then the other side with the other half of the song or some remix or something. So this is the very first 12-inch single that was commercially released. And this would prove the point that there was indeed commercial value in a 12-inch single because people were buying it and it became a mega hit, especially in the realm of disco. So it's through these 4 songs that we really see how Philadelphia soul was a crucial precursor to disco. By the late 70s, disco was the preeminent black and LGBTQ music style. Philly soul hits received significant rotation in discotheques, and there was a great deal of cross-pollination with Philadelphia-born aesthetics in the underground New York City culture, which is where disco was born. I mean, it was only 100 miles away or so. So you see how there's that overlap between what Philadelphia was building. And in addition, there's also, there's Motown. They kind of set the stage for what would become Philadelphia soul earlier on. But the conventions and the different elements of Philadelphia soul would directly translate to disco in the late 70s. And disco proper would flourish, unfortunately, until Disco Demolition Night in 1979, which more or less crushed the spirit of the original disco movement. And Disco Demolition Night is something we definitely should talk about at some point. Maybe next episode, we'll see. But that was kind of the cutoff point for the original disco movement. However, that did not mean that disco would die. Disco would be adapted into different forms by combining elements from other genres. For example, post-disco would come around the same time, actually, and right after, and would continue on into the 80s. And you had things like mutant disco in the New York underground scene that would combine elements of no wave and post-punk and for some Afrobeat, Afro-funk from Nigeria, from African countries. And then, of course, boogie, which was a big genre in the late 70s and early to mid 80s as well. All of them combine elements of disco here and there. They have like a disco bass, but layer other elements of music on top of them to create a really unique sound. So, with all that being said, I will leave you all off with that. Thank you all so much for listening. Be sure to follow on TikTok, follow on Instagram, and also there will be, of course, an accompanying playlist with these 4 songs plus a handful of other songs to kind of get a better feel for the sound and the vibe of Philadelphia soul. That'll be all linked in the description. Be sure to check out the Substack for articles and essays that I write. And yeah, thank you again for listening, and I will see you all next time. Cultural DJ out.